Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and broadcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David, BDEX's founder and CEO. How's it going, David?
Hey, Jesse. I feel like I say this every week, but I can't believe it's Thursday already. The weeks go by so fast. Everybody's been busy. So here we are again, episode number 72. So looking forward to bringing in our new guest.
Yeah, same. We are lucky yet again to have another amazing guest. So today we're lucky to welcome Joe Wheeler, CEO of CX Digital and author of the Digital First Customer Experience. Let me bring him on the screen. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, great to be here.
Great to have you. We appreciate you taking your time to spend with us today on the show. And so why don't you kick it off for us and talk to our listeners a little bit about your background. Tell them a little bit about where you come from, how you got to where you are today, and a little bit about why you created CX Digital and what you guys are doing today for your customers.
Yeah, great. Again, just wonderful to be here. So Joe Wheeler, CX Digital is a design firm, subsidiary of a company I co-founded with some Harvard Business School professors a few years ago. So our focus is really to help our clients, understand how they make sense of what I describe as the digital tsunami many organizations are facing in terms of how they design and deliver experiences today, but also prepare for the future. And how did I get here? That's a great question. I ask myself that question once in a while. Many years ago, I had a formative experience when I worked for Hewlett Packard. And we were installing back then manufacturing systems, automation in manufacturing systems. And I just noticed the resistance that existed in terms of how these platforms got adopted. And I realized, this really is about people. So I ended up working for a company called the Forum Corporation, where I worked for 17 years and co-authored a book called Managing the Customer Experience with Sean Smith in the UK, which sold a ton of copies. I have to say, I think Sean and I were both a little surprised because it started off as us each writing columns in the Financial Times. And they said, hey, I think there's a book in here. At any rate, I then wrote a book called The Ownership Quotient with Jim Heskett and Earl Sasser from the Harvard Business School. And this new book really was trying to, well, I'll be honest, what we all lived through in COVID was quite interesting from a standpoint of how companies reacted. And we saw companies that had their digital act together and they really rose to the challenge, and others that, were caught on their back foot. So a good friend of mine, who's a leader in digital transformation, said in a Forbes article, it should be the aspiration of every company to deliver a touchless experience. But I'll tell you, David and Jesse, I've always quoted Charlotte Beers when she said, the truth is what makes a brand powerful is the emotional involvement of customers. And so this book was sort of, how do you reconcile these two statements? Has technology achieved so much that it can deliver the kind of attachment and kind of emotional connection we expect really from frontline employees? So it's an exploration of that intersection and a look at companies that have figured this out.
Interesting. So I love the term digital tsunami. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, because you're right. There's just, I think that when you talk about, a company, whatever they're doing from a digital standpoint, there's just so many. I mean, I call it vendor fatigue. There's so many vendors out there, for your digital marketing or advertising or whatever it is that you're doing. Now it's, cloud computing, whatever it is. Like there's so many options out there. And I feel like there's sort of that vendor fatigue where there's just so many people throwing things at you. You don't know which, you don't know where to go. Is that what you're talking about? Is there more to it?
There's more. Well, I am talking about that. But the other piece of this, David, is what I kind of described as the 3 C's. And one of the C's is just this convergence. And, so for example, when you look at the impact of what we were talking about before, right? Generative AI and conversational AI, and how ambient conversational AI is changing the way we interface with technology. So, many years ago we used keyboards and then we went to a mouse, and now with ambient conversational AI, I mean, it kind of anticipates what we need. Mm-hmm. So, but that alone is interesting. But what is really interesting is when you understand how this technology will converge with edge-based computing. Okay, and really drive down latency. And then add Web3 and kind of blockchain, kind of the semantic version of the internet connected with application networks that make it much easier for applications, even at scale, to talk to each other. And then here's a factoid that often people don't know this, but 6G is still around the corner, like it's several years away. But when you think of how much faster so here's the thing. I ask people, how much faster do you think 6G will be over 5G once it's fully deployed? And people go, well, 30, 40% faster. And the answer is, and I've checked this out with my colleagues in the telecom industry, when it's fully deployed, it will probably be the early 2030s, it'll be like 30 to 50 times faster than 5.
Yeah.
Faster, 30 to 50 times. So you have to realize where technology is heading is a tsunami, because imagine your home Wi-Fi running at 30 times faster than it is today. Think of what can be designed from an experience standpoint with that type of capacity and latency, and then add on all the other things we're seeing, Jesse and David, in terms of just immersive design. It's an exciting time to be in this game, quite honestly.
Yeah, it sure is, for sure. And I have heard that stat too, that 6G is going to be multiples.
Right.
So it's incredible. And I think that leads us really well into our first topic. Exploring the convergence of tech.
Yeah. And so a couple things that I think are really interesting. So I give this talk, and you probably both know this, but there's this a bot named Michaela who has about 3 million Instagram followers. And she's a bot. Everyone knows she's a bot. She makes like $10 million a year. How many Instagram models make $10 million a year? I don't know how many, but it's not that much. But to me, one of the things that's interesting is, like, she generates a lot of interest and a lot of comments. And it's interesting to see this convergence of human attachment to technology, which smarter people than me have written extensively about this and studied this. But I think this is a big trend. Like, one of the things I point out in this talk is that, and this is a difficult topic for a lot of companies, I think, is the truth is technology is moving at a speed that, as latency drops down and this kind of chasm around how we interface with technology just becomes as simple as saying hello, you'll deliver emotional experiences at scale that'll be pretty satisfying to people. And I think that's a little challenge a lot of organizations are trying to figure out, because what's it mean for how you design experiences that achieve, emotional peaks at different touch points in a way that you can scale these things. And that's why we studied these companies that, for example, Lemonade is a company I'm sure you're familiar with, the insurance disruptor. And so they have a chatbot, AI Maya. She will sell you property insurance in like 90 seconds, and a great experience. If you and I took a word cloud and looked at all their customer testimonials, the word you will see the most is love. People love this company, and their NPS scores rivals Apple's and everyone. So this is a totally digital experience with high emotional attachments from their customer base. To me, that's really interesting, and it speaks to this convergence of what we're all feeling.
Yeah, it's crazy. It paints a really crazy future for us, right? Where we're talking to everything, right? And everything's talking back to us. It's going to be interesting for sure. I think the future is definitely has a lot in store for what AI means to the customer experience. I think that's a perfect example. I think that it'll be really interesting. I love your example of that Instagram bot, because I think that there's going to become more and more of that. I think that is kind of like an outlier today, but I think that the future is there's going to be a lot of these, different types of bots that will be, communicating, people will want to communicate with for one reason or another. And it might, just be for entertainment, or, I can see, in the future it being a lot more than just entertainment as well. It's more functional. Look at the whole virtual assistant sort of industry,
Mm.
and think about what the virtual assistant industry could look like when bots are programmed to be able to do a lot of these tasks for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I talk about is a company in Boston that is in the healthcare industry. I mean, so this is really an interesting application. They did a pilot for a large healthcare, like home-based healthcare service, and this is a product called LifePod, and they piloted them. I forget how many people were involved in the pilot, but basically, this is something where a caregiver. One of the problems in this country is the biggest driver of healthcare is hospital stays. So when you show up from a chronic disease and you're in the hospital for a week, that's the biggest driver of costs in the system. So, the more people can stay at home, the better. But, there's an aging population problem as well, right? Well, what this platform does, it allows the caregiver to configure the virtual assistant for the senior person. And so, they can build reminders in. They can say, hey, now's the perfect time to stretch. It's your nephew's birthday. Would you like to give him a phone call and wish him a happy birthday? And so what's interesting is not only did all the results of this pilot improve, like better conformance to taking medications, like it's easy to forget, to take your Plavix at 10 o'clock. But the second thing it created, which was 100% satisfaction by all the pilot participants, was companionship.
Mm-hmm.
Companionship. People said, I don't feel alone anymore. They're talking to a bot, David, a bot, right? But listen, what's wrong with that? Like, I realize, this is a controversial thing, but it's like when you look at the face evidence of the participants and the positive emotional outcome it made in their life, it's hard to argue with this because there's no way the system could afford to provide that type of service, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. And I think that when you get to the point where you're able to provide better service using an AI or a bot than a person, then you should be doing it, right? I mean, for sure.
Well, and I think, you guys are experts at this. I think what's going to happen is we will, with time, understand the jobs that AI can do, that it just can do better. Like talking about AI Maya, when you decide to buy insurance from her, she asks you 14 questions, right? In those 14 questions, she hits 1,700 data points to get you the price that's right for you. Like, what human could possibly do that? So that's a great job for her. At the same time, when you have a claim that's a little bit tricky, you'll default to talk potentially to what they call a lemonade maker to help you with that claim. At the same time, that the data comes into that claims adjuster, like pretty much fully formed, and it doesn't take long to get your claim approved. So I think we'll start to understand what is technology really well developed to do and what things is it not. I mean, I had a purchase from Best Buy the other day, and it was something that I had complained about from a usage standpoint. And the salesperson called me and said, "Hey, Joe, it's Jeff for Best Buy. I just want to reach out. I knew you had a problem with this thing. How's it going?" And I was completely impressed. I mean, when was the last time you got a call from a retail salesperson to follow up something you bought a week ago? I was impressed. So, I mean, there's roles for humans. Like I say, in a digital first, does it mean human second? No, of course not.
That's I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention it before we got into the next topic that, humans, there's still roles for us in all of this. It's just our jobs might change. They might evolve, right? Someone's got to feed the data,
Yes.
And program the bots. But let's dive into AI a little more with our second topic, next gen intelligence, which we've kind of been talking about already, the future of generative AI. So let's go into depth a little more here. Like what can we expect? What do you think my children can expect with the future of generative AI?
Well, how old are your kids? Just kidding.
9 and 5.
Oh, there you go. So I think, number one, if you're a company, not to pick on Lemonade again, but they have a pretty sophisticated tech stack already. They've already looked at 100 use cases of how Gen AI will change their operations, like take costs, like not 1 or 2 points of operating margin out of the business, but significant, right? So if you already are pretty sophisticated in your tech stack and your talent, you will get a lot more out of it because you're just, you've got the capabilities to do that. I think most companies that we're working with are looking at the impact it can have, for cost savings, to take repetitive tasks that are kind of terrible jobs and to automate those in a way that does that, but still, repurpose roles so that employees do higher value activities, Jesse, as I think you were kind of alluding to. But so organizations are just going to be different. And I'd love to make a point that, so I think consumers' experience with things like Chat GPT, which still, creates error. Like if you Googled me, you'd find out on Chat GPT that I actually have I think a PhD from Harvard and another degree from the University of Georgia, where I've never even been on their campus. So here's the thing, though. Don't confuse that with, machine learning enterprise grade applications. That's a whole different world. And so I think one thing we'll see to answer your questions is large language models will get better, but so will one of the partners I work with, expert language models, where, the data by which Gen AI is making recommendations and kind of interactions from is a very high quality, more contained data set. That's going to be one big change. And then the second thing I would say is that, the front office is going to change. I mean, this is just the truth of it. It's just going to be how we will interface with brands and with retail, especially as latency decreases and ambient interactions become much more simple. Like right now, I bet when I went to Best Buy, I went on their website first. Like 86% of people do to find information on the product I was thinking of buying before I went to the store because I wanted to pick it up that day. There'll be a time when that store might come to me. Right? There'll be a time when that store could come to me. So these are the sort of kind of seismic changes we're going to see in the next 10 or 15 years.
It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's just a lot of different aspects when you talk about generative AI, because you mentioned expert language models, and I think that that's a really good point. Not everything is based on sort of these large language models. It doesn't have to be a massive data set like the entire English language and all the writings. It could be a very specific data set, like something that we do, which is very specific to identity data. Just looking at what is a real identity signal look like, and filtering through tons of data to try to figure out, is this real or not? And it's we've built technology that does that. So it's not necessarily looking at this massive language model. It's actually a very small language model, but
right.
It's very specific to identifying the right signals and providing the right output.
And what makes generative AI a little bit different than AI is that, it trains itself, right? So the training now becomes kind of self-imposed by the technology. So the reason I mention this is that when people talk about machine learning, they tend to focus on the machine and not the learning. Like the power of AI Maya isn't those 1,700 data sets, as impressive as it is. It's that every time she does a transaction, she learns something. Do you know what I mean? Her precision and recall get better every interaction. And that's why this is unavoidable, is because generative AI will make machine learning and the transformers that guide it just faster. And as a result, I don't know what the world will look like in 10 years. I wish I had a crystal ball, but none of us do. I mean, that's the truth of it. None of us really do. This rocket ship is just left the launch pad. And if you do know what it's all about, you're from the future. So find those people and get them on your show, Jesse.
I kind of think that we came from the future, because it was probably only about a year ago, a little over a year ago, when very early, one of the early podcasts that we had a conversation about, do we think that someday that you'll literally be able to just talk to the computer and tell it what you want to program, and it would write it for you, and now you can do that, right? And so it's all happened, and just over a year ago we were having that conversation, and we were like, oh yeah, maybe we'll be able to do that in the future. Well, the future is here,
right?
And so it's crazy to think how fast all of this is happening.
Well,
definitely.
Well, and as you both know, just look at I read a report, I can't remember the numbers, but just the amount of venture money going into Gen AI companies right now, like it really is pretty extraordinary. So, if you follow the money, this industry is going to go through, I mean, eventually it'll go through some consolidation, but just looking at the investment. But here's the thing though, remember, it's not cheap, right? These are expensive things to get into. So,
Mhm.
you need to still, three things. One is what we help companies do is really separate the signals from the noise. It's like, and this is why this is important to kind of keep your um, just your practical, keep the voice of the customer driven in your organization, so you're solving problems that really matter to them. Like one of the companies we feature is Amazon, and I'll be honest, like for 300 years we worked with clients to try to improve lines. We did. I mean, we came up with a billion ideas from, we didn't invent self-checkout, but we worked on self-checkout and line busting. We gave, cash retail folks an iPad that could kind of check you out quickly and things like that. Amazon said, why are people in line?
Right.
Like, couldn't they be like, wouldn't they rather be doing something? So this is an important point, because lots of organizations have teams working on improving things that they just assume can't be eliminated. Well, with technology, some things that you thought could never be fixed can be eliminated. So just walk out technology changes the experience for the customer. It changes the experience for the frontline employee. Hudson News have deployed this in Dallas Fort Worth as a pilot, and I think they scaled this just walk out technology. And now the cashier, instead of his or her job worrying that you're stealing a bag of M&Ms, is basically helping you find those M&Ms, and you can just walk out, which is in an airport when you're busy is a great application. So I think that's the other thing that's of real interest to me, is how technology is kind of changing things we just assumed couldn't be fixed, and saying, you know what, there's a way to do this.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a kind of a new way to look at things, right? When you're looking to solve problems, maybe not try to solve the problem, but try to avoid the problem altogether. Do you
Mm.
even have that problem?
Well, and this is where
Mhm.
I sort of depart, I think, with some of my colleagues in the CX design world, because one of the things we learned from Cemex, another great case study in the story, this is cement, right? It's not like Nike, it's not Amazon, it's cement. And they've won awards for their digital, what they call Cemex Go. But Cemex didn't start by talking to their customers. They started by benchmarking companies who were real digital first leaders, who had really figured out how to apply technology. So you say, like, isn't that wrong? Shouldn't they have started with their customers? And listen, that's not a bad path. But the difference is, because they had looked at the world through a lens of technology, when they were hearing customers, and then they did full agile stories, journey mapping, empathy maps. They're just a model for doing all that good work. But they had a lens of technology on it. So they could see solutions immediately that they would not have seen it hadn't they done that. And I think this is a new idea. I think this is the new way to think about CX design, and they're just a model of it. So long story short, I would say one of the things that I would encourage your listeners to take away is this idea, which is, you have to sort of suspend your assumptions about what's possible and go to school on behavioral science, on blockchain, on immersive technologies, on augmented reality. None of this may matter to your customers, but understanding what the opportunity is with these things will help you see your customers' problems through a slightly different lens. By the way, lots of people disagree with me on this. So, and I welcome it, because it's in the debate that I think that we find some kind of creative solutions.
What are some common disagreements that you hear?
Oh, well, one is, why would you always start with the customer, always understand their journey, what are their jobs to be done, really like human-centered design. And our teams use human-centered design. So I'm not debating that. I'm debating the lens. Like, for example, many years ago, we worked with a company in the electronics payments-based business. And I was sitting in the CEO's office waiting to meet him for the first time. And this is in Palo Alto. And I look up, and there's on his wall was a letter from another CEO, said, hey, so-and-so, congratulations on your 140th millionth customer. Now, Jesse, I have to tell you, we didn't have a lot of clients at 140 million customers, like maybe the federal government, who we didn't really work with, or a bank in China. But think about that. And I realized companies in the Valley, in Silicon Valley, they just have a digital first mindset. Like, they just think in terms of large scale types of solutions that drive an insight around how do you do things with digital that would make a difference for the customer.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, that's crazy, for sure. Let's. I want to before as we're running out of time, so I don't want to. I want to make sure we hit everything. And so one of the other things we wanted to talk about on the ML side was how ML crafts personalization. So talk to us about this and your thoughts about this and the future of this.
Yeah, so personalization is changing, as obviously you both know so clearly. But one of the things we noticed, and we talked about it earlier, is I learned this from really the folks at Spotify, who, when it comes to personalization, there's a lot of great companies out there, Amazon being one of them, obviously Netflix and things like that. But to me, Spotify is just at another level. I mean, just at another level. And there's three reasons for that. One is just they have this feeling that the world is moving, that in fact um, that in fact you earn loyalty by creating more value. So they talk about this transition from the attention economy to the value economy, how important that is. And the second thing is they really, like, people will say, I feel like they know me better than myself. They're so predictive in terms of their recommendations. And so the second thing is how much they invest in machine learning and reinforcement models. And you can see now they're doubling down in generative AI with their DJ product, so they're actually, able to kind of use Gen AI to predict even better playlists than they have in the past. And then the third thing is how they think about lifetime value. So they're, what their head of machine learning has said, lifetime value, their new version of how they calculate that as a dynamic, proactive type of measure will be one of the core measures they use in managing the business. And this is public knowledge. They mentioned it at an investor conference. So to me, that is really interesting, because here's what they're after for personalization: engagement. What they're trying to do, and I think companies who really understand personalization being more than just the next click or just a good recommendation, is they're pushing you a bit. So they're not going to just recommend, if you love the Beach Boys, they're not going to just recommend another Beach Boys like song. They're going to encourage you to listen to a podcast or to an audiobook, and kind of stretch your listening capabilities so you have what they call a healthy content diet. So that's how they see keeping their subscribers, is because they're going to broaden your view of your audio kind of appetite. To me, that is remarkable. Like, to me, that's a company that takes personalization beyond just what's in it for them, and are starting from the customer back and understanding what's in it for the customer to keep using the service and to keep growing as a person, as opposed to just getting another conversion. Does that make sense to the two of you?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that I actually think Netflix used to be really good at this.
Yes.
They're used, and I think that I don't think it's advanced as much as it should have. I think early on Netflix, when they were kind of the leader, and they were kind of the first to really be doing it. I had actually met one of the founders, and he had done a presentation for and a group that I'm part of, entrepreneurs organization. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about how, they were so focused on their, sort of their engine that they called it at the time, that made recommendations, their recommendation engine. That, as well as taking those recommendations and looking at how they performed, and then actually looking to create content that was based on what was performing well. And I thought that was really, really interesting, the way they did that. But I don't know that it has advanced as well as like what you say Spotify's has, because my experience with Netflix has been that the recommendations haven't been as good, and you would think that they would have advanced by now. And we're still seeing more and more shows that they come out with, and then after 1 or 2 seasons they get axed. So maybe they're not getting the viewership that they thought they were getting. So it's interesting to see that how some companies are really, got a really good grasp at where they're going with the future, and others seem to have leveled off. I think like someone like Netflix.
Well, and David, I think a lot of this has to do with culture. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I always say great companies or good companies have a mission. Great companies are on a mission.
Yeah.
And you can tell that 15 minutes into being there. You can just tell it 15 minutes into being there. And that is what is exciting about companies to study like Nike, who, for my money, really is just the state of the art in terms of designing immersive experiences that are personalized. Speaking of
Mhm.
personalization, right? So when you go to the Nike store in New York City, the House of Innovation, and you're a Nike member on their app, and you scan the code, your experience is curated throughout that store, and that's a big store. I forget, I think it's like maybe 60,000 square feet, very big.
Mhm.
And it can be overwhelming, but I'll tell you, when it's curated for you, it's not. And you really have an experience that's remarkable. So that's the combination of personalization with kind of conversions of experience of technologies, like in their case, things like computer vision. You can take a picture of your feet and get like just shoes that fit your foot perfectly. And understanding kind of what your training goals are, right? So you can build that all in the app so that when you're talking to one of their athletes, they're really kind of focused on helping you become the best athlete you can become. So I'm a tennis player. I don't think using Rafael Nadal's racket would help me that much. It's good for him because he's so good, but maybe for me, I need something with a little more weight, right? So I can keep the ball in the court, not outside of it.
Yep.
So they're focused on you in a way that I think is really profound. So Nike do a great job of personalization in terms of the convergence of technology, kind of how they've invested in things that allow that personalization to happen, and then really creating a store experience and a digital experience that mirrors that. So, and this is just a homework assignment for anyone listening. If you've not been to a Nike House of Innovation, like put it on your marketing to-do list because it really is something to see. Even if you're purely a digital marketer, it's something to see.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, I haven't done that, so that's really good to know. And I think that you make a really good point. I think that it's an important thing for us to talk about is the fact that really the future of personalization is, that's where the brands are able to build relationships with customers, and that's where everything is going. And if you're not doing that, if you're not heading towards that way, it's a slippery slope. You're going to have others that will, and people are going to be drawn to those that are able to provide that level of personalization.
Well, and here's the good news is, one of the chapters, one of the strategies is about providing customers control and choice. But,
Mhm.
customers running the experience now, whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? We're omni-channel, all of us. And so, but the good news is the more you provide control and choice, two things go up. One is satisfaction, no surprise, but so is trust. And
Yep.
the power here is as you give customers more control or choice, they increase their interactions with you. As they increase interactions, you're learning more about them. And as you're learning more about them, you're able to use machine learning to
Mhm.
personalize the experience to be even more relevant in a way that can be precise and, quote, not creepy. And so that is, if you're not worried about this, I guarantee you your competitors are on it. And
Yeah.
so there is a part of this thinking that says, make good choices, but don't wait on the sidelines. Like, don't wait to see what's going to happen because it'll run pretty quickly by you, I think.
And I like the advice to don't be creepy because, yeah, that's definitely a thing too. But I want to make sure our audience gets to hear about some of your favorite tools in your tech stack, Joe. So let's transition into the final topic in case we don't have time to get to the post topic questions, but we would love to hear what are some of your favorite software tools that you use, your team uses that help you on in your day to day?
Yeah, so a couple, and full disclosure, we have some great partnerships with some companies like Pointless, which is a Pointless is a fantastic platform for understanding your customer's experience across the journey. So it looks at data around, the customers have trouble using your mobile app, and did they maybe not convert and call a call center, for example. So it's able to track sort of containment measures and things like that, and give you a 360 view of the customer that is really, really hard to get otherwise. And they're owned by a company called Genesis, the big call center cloud operator. And then I'm doing quite a bit of work with a company called Retail Next. Retail Next have the leading in-store data analytics tool. So if you're a retailer listening, you probably have Retail Next. If you don't, you might want to look into it because it really just changes how you'll design so much of the store and the store employee experience. Another company like for example, we have clients that say, Joe, like, how do we start with Gen AI? And one nice way to start is to support your agents, support your call center agents with some artificial intelligence technology that, just gives agents the power to exceed expectations on every call. So a company we work with is called Excel Technologies. They do a nice job with being able to introduce Gen AI so they can understand what high performers do and be able to create models and kind of stories for all the agents to follow that exceed customer expectations. And then, from technology we use, or kind of just generally speaking, I mean, quite honestly, Bard and all those kind of available, affordable tools, they really help. I had to read a 1,200-page document the other day. How was I going to possibly do that? So ChatGPT was pretty helpful just to summarize that document and be able to pull the insights out of it. And but there's so many. Like, we could go on for another hour. I don't know if you have used DALL-E recently in terms of creating images and things like that. It's pretty remarkable. But it does speak to, a topic we haven't had time to talk to today. And maybe we can talk about it another time, which is what's going to happen around governance, and protecting the rights of artists is a really important thing, right? Congress has got to figure that out, and other governments has got to figure out how do we manage and protect the people, artists' rights and things like that as these technologies get more scaled out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's one we've talked about here before too, as well. And it's it's definitely a sensitive topic. For one, being able to prove whether a picture is real or not, right?
Right.
I mean, the fact that you can use something like DALL-E to create an image, and maybe you're creating an image of somebody, doing something that they've never done, and they don't want to be seen that way. So it gets really scary in that way, of course. And then there's also the obvious trademark issues that are going on as well in generative AI, and ChatGPT is dealing with that as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how they figure out how to keep tabs on all of that and restrict that. And some people have talked about, do AI images have to be tagged in some way so that you can actually know through the tagging, or even through some sort of code or something that's on the image itself. Who knows what's going to happen? But I definitely agree, and that something needs to happen in order to protect artists, for sure.
Yeah. A lot of questions that come up. Well, real quick, let's make sure we get time to ask you. This is something we ask all of our guests who were able to get through the topics on Joe. If you could go back in a time when you first came into, this industry, what is the number one piece of advice you would give yourself?
No, that's a good question. What's the number one? I guess I'd say don't confuse the important for the urgent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an old saying. I forget who said it, but it's like, if you're only focused on kind of the most urgent thing, you never get to what the important things are. So someone gave me that advice when I was actually young, and it actually was very helpful. I actually spontaneously created a job change for me. So I guess that would be my answer.
That's a really good one. I don't think anyone has ever said that, but thank you for sharing that. And
Great.
going off of that, are there any lessons you've learned along the way from past or current jobs that you think everyone should know?
Oh, for sure. Like, like, always surround yourself with smarter people than you. Like, at one point I had a job as head of Six Sigma and quality at Bank of America. And I had like these 25 Six Sigma master black belts reporting to me. And like, I was the dumbest guy in the room. I mean, I felt like sometimes the only value I would bring is I'd say, is anyone hungry? I could order you have an expense. So, the best managers understand they don't have the best ideas. So get a lot of people who are smarter than you on the team, and you'll never fail with that principle. I swear to God.
That's great.
I agree. That's excellent.
All right. Well, in closing, Joe, would you like to tell listeners where they can find you?
Yeah. So 2 websites, cxdigital.ai. So that's cxdigital.ai. And then for speaking and things like that, I actually have a second website, Bright Site Speakers is my representative, but you can go to joewheeler.co. Just all one word, joewheeler.co.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And we really appreciate you coming here. And real quick, audience members, we hope you will check out BeatX's Omni IQ. You simply go to beatx.com and you click try for free, or you can use this QR code I'm going to put up here on the screen if you're watching, and that'll take you to Omni IQ. No credit card required. And you can simply just upload a CSV file of your first party customer data, and then you can learn about your list. And so once you upload your list, you can get the gender, birth year, household income analytics all on your data. So we would love to hear from you and what you think about Omni IQ, but also what you think about the show. So please reach us at info@beatx.com and share your data with us so we can make this show better for you.
I'm scanning it right now.
Oh, awesome. Let me get it back up there.
All right, awesome. This was great, Joe. Thank you so much for joining the show, and we look forward to maybe having you on again. I'm sure we can dig a little deeper into some of these topics and more.
Thanks. And sorry, my dogs lost their minds. It just happened. It's 2023, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was dogs or a cuckoo clock.
No, there were 2 dogs. The only reason I got this book out the door was they wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just get up and write because I couldn't get back. So I thanked them in the book. They're acknowledged.
That's awesome.
Great.
Well, I always tell people we're a dog-friendly podcast, so no problem at all.
Well, now you can claim that for sure. Thanks, guys.
Well,
right,
thank you
you
to you and your dogs. Have a great night.
Okay.